Welcome to the Fourth Down Show, guys. I'm your host, Kicking It with Keith. This is the AFC East Index Show, the Miami Dolphins edition. Now, they always say there's two sides to every story. That best describes Brian Flores and his Miami Dolphins of last season. We're going to jump right into it and those stories right now. Let's go. Okay, the Miami Dolphins of last season, they were pretty much all in tank season. Even though it was tank season, it was a competitive tank season, one you don't really see often. They started out 0-7, but they fought for most of those games, and unfortunately, they were on a path to go 0-16. They would have been the third team to go 0-16, but they definitely turned their future around, and they went and they got 5 wins out of the second half of the season, and that's just a testament to head coach Brian Flores, who I'm a big fan of. I think he's a no nonsense kind of guy. you know he has guys playing hard for him. He brings that mentality from New England to do your job, and that's something that is really good for a franchise like the Dolphins, because they don't know what winning is, but Brian Flores does, and that's something that I really saw in their performances last season, even in some of their losses, mainly against the Jets. We probably should have lost that game, but man, they gave us fits, and that was one thing that they gave a lot of teams, just consistent fits. They didn't roll over for anyone, and that says a lot about Brian Flores. That usually happens when you have a really good head coach. Guys want to play for him. So let's jump into some of the departures that they had this offseason, and they really didn't have any, and that's a really big deal. Just recently, they had wide receiver Albert Wilson opt out of the 2020 season due to the COVID-19 situation, though I think they can rebound. I don't think that's a huge loss for this team, but, he's been with the Dolphins for some time now. I think they'll just move past it and do their due diligence with the receivers that they have in their wide receiver room. But the big deal for the Miami Dolphins is some of the key additions that they had this offseason, and I think they did a really good job of revamping the talent on this roster. They start off with spending huge money on Byron Jones for the Dallas Cowboys. This is a versatile defensive back. He can play corner, nickel, pretty much can play both safety positions. And that's something that Brian Flores looks for in his defenders. He's a really talented guy, and I think he's going to move him around and just cause a lot of matchup problems for a lot of, teams that like to involve running backs in the passing game, a lot of slot guys, tight ends. That's a really good defender you want to match up against those offensive weapons. So it's a really nice signing that they got down there in Miami. Moving on to a pair of running backs that they got. Jordan Howard, the bruiser, the goal line back. He's going to give you exactly what you expect. He's going to lower his shoulder, get the tough yards, and do his job. And that's a running back that the Miami Dolphins really haven't had in some time. It's a new profile for them that they can match up with a very speedy back that they acquired this offseason as well in a trade, Matt Breida. So now you got your Thunder, you got your Lightning. It's really exactly what you want on any team. You want a really good change of pace of running backs, both of whom are experienced, and Matt Breida just coming off a Super Bowl run. These guys are gonna want to win, and they're hungry, and they're going to want carries. So this is a really good running back room that they have down in Miami. Moving on, Kyle Van Noy from New England. Outside linebacker. He can set the edge. He can rush the passer, and he can definitely, play the run. This is a guy who's not going to fill up the stat sheet, but as you saw in the Super Bowl against the Rams, he does a lot of the little things. He'll take on blockers. He'll open it up for a lot of other guys. He's a really good clog to have on that defense. And he comes from the Belichick system. So does Brian Flores. And you can see a trend. Moving on to Shaq Lawson. They got from the Bills. Listen, Shaq Lawson is nothing special. He didn't get offered a second contract from the Bills. Usually that's a little bit of a worrisome when you see guys not getting that second contract with their drafty team. Maybe he finds some new life down in Miami with Brian Flores. Landon Roberts, they got from also New England. Another guy who's really good in coverage, good linebacker, could pretty much line him up in about 2-3 spots. He'll serve his job pretty well on the Flores, and it's a really good depth that they have down there at linebacker, and we'll jump into that when we get into the depth chart. But it's a really good pickup, Landon Roberts for the Miami Dolphins. They also added offensive lineman Eric Flowers, and if you're familiar with Eric Flowers, he's pretty awful. He's currently on the COVID-19 reserve list, meaning he may have been exposed to COVID-19, someone he's been around. So Hopefully, eventually gets off that list, but he's not really a really impactful player. He's trying to turn his career around because at tackle he was horrendous. They'll be probably slotting him into guard this upcoming off season. Excuse me, this upcoming season. Moving on to the draft that the Miami Dolphins had. This is where they hit big. This is where the future of the franchise is built on this foundation, and it starts off with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. They tanked for him, but they also were competitive in tanking, and it worked out in a weird way where you can respect it. They did exactly what they wanted to do. They didn't want to just roll over for anyone, and they got the guy. Tua's gonna bring so many fans to this franchise. He's gonna kill it for them if he stays healthy, and that is a big if. But he's a hell of a passer. He's lefty. He's gonna just look different. He's keen on the eye. He has great mobility in the pocket. This is a guy that can change your franchise, and if he's healthy, this is just the stars were aligned for the Miami Dolphins. So I'm very happy to see Tua get drafted. It was a lot of naysayers about his health, and he does have to prove that he can stay healthy on a pro level. But I'm rooting for him, and it sucks because he plays on the Dolphins, and they're one of my rivals. So we'll see how that story unfolds. I'm sure Tua's gonna do his thing. And moving on to the next selection, Austin Jackson, offensive lineman from USC. They have to revamp the offensive line, especially drafting Tua. They have to keep him on his feet instead of on his back, knowing that he has a really bad injury history. Austin Jackson can build with Tua, for the long run. They have a lot of issues on the O-line. I wouldn't call them issues, actually. They're just young. They're inexperienced. We'll jump into that when we get into the depth chart. But it's a really good pick if you're revamping your franchise and you're starting from scratch and you want to set a tone for the future, and that's another good selection for the Miami Dolphins. They went about the rest of their draft filling in needs. Cornerback Noah Egonohe, guard Robert Hunt. That's going to be a theme. Another lineman that they drafted. DT Raekwon Davis. I think Davis can actually start for this team eventually. Alabama players usually bode well under Belichick. And, as you can see with Coach Flores, he sees, pretty much the same thing. You get, really well-coached guys from the Nick Saban tree. Safety Brandon Jones, guard Solomon Kidney. I guess that's, more for depth. Defensive end Jason Strawbridge. Defensive end Curtis Weaver. Center Blake Ferguson. Wide receiver Malcolm Perry. Now, these guys you might not, know much about, but this is what Belichick does, so I'm pretty sure Brian Flores is doing the same thing. You're going to get a lot of hardworking guys that are going to, buy into the do-your-job mentality. And trust me, if this works, this is going to suck for, people like me who root for the Jets, because this is going to be a really well-coached team with a lot of hardworking guys that are going to be competitive with one another and fighting for reps. And that's exactly what you want from a young team trying to turn around the image and basically get on a path of winning. So let's jump into the depth chart for the Miami Dolphins. As you can see, the starting offense. Now, I know what you're going to say. Ryan Fitzpatrick's pretty much, locked to start week 1. But eventually, Tua's going to get that spot. This is Tua's team eventually. This is his franchise. He's been given the keys. And I'd say maybe after a month of Ryan Fitzpatrick, Tua's going to get in the fray and he's going to get his feet wet. And I think he's going to flourish. Problem is those guys in front of him, they're really young. And if you're starting Eric Flowers, that's always a big worry. As you can see, the rookie Austin Jackson on the left and rookie Robert Hunt on the right at the tackle position. Karras is their most senior offensive lineman. He's in the center slot, and you have Calhoun at right guard. And here's what I want to get into. Some of the weapons that they have to really cause problems with. And it starts with DeVanteParker, who really came on last season. I thought he was such an enigma for the first few years of his career. We didn't know why this guy wasn't exploding onto the scene, why this guy wasn't getting, consistent 1,000-yard seasons. And if you look at it now, it probably was because Adam Gase was coaching him, and that's terrible for guys like me. But DeVanteParker, man, he came on so big last season. He had a humongous second half, and that was around the time that they were actually winning some football games. So DeVanteParker, man, listen, he's probably just scratching the surface of learning how to be a very polished wide receiver. He did really well against Stephon Gilmore last season. He played against top tier corners, Trey White. I think Trey White actually gave him a little bit of problems, but Parker did his thing, man. He actually finally bursted out onto the scene. So I'm rooting for Devontae Parker, just not against my Jets. And I think the sky's the limit for Devontae. As you can see, Isaiah Ford is in the slot. He's replacing Albert Wilson, who we mentioned earlier, opted out due to the COVID-19 situation. And just so you guys know, tomorrow is the deadline, which would be Friday. This show will be probably coming out after that. So we're going to get a lot of news if guys are going to be opting out. So just FYI, when you see this and you're like, hey, dude, this guy opted out. Why is he in, the image? Listen, I'm doing this literally the day before of the opt-out deadline. So apologies in advance. As you can see, Jordan Howard, he'll probably be starting in the backfield week 1 for the Miami Dolphins. But please expect a timeshare. Matt Breida, who has a little bit of a fumbling history, is definitely going to get some carries. They're going to fight for it. And, once you get traded to a new team, you want to make, your name known and get ready to see a really, competitive backfield. I'm actually really excited from a football state of mind of this running back backfield that they got down there in Miami. As you can see, Preston Williams on the other end of Devontae Parker. Preston Williams was a preseason darling last season, and he actually proved his worth. He played a lot last season. He was productive, and he's a hell of a route runner for a guy who's just coming onto the scene. I believe he's coming over an injury, but I think he'll be healthy to start the season. And sky's the limit again. You have 2 really good, competent wide receivers in Parker and Williams. That's really good for a rookie quarterback. And then another, harping on that same tone for a rookie quarterback is a really good tight end, because tight ends are quarterbacks' best friends. Another player who came out onto the scene, Mike Gesicki from Penn State. This guy's an athlete. This guy's huge. This guy can run. His catch radius is out of this world. It kind of reminds me of a lot of before, George Kittle became the superstar that George Kittle was. This is reminding me a little bit of that. Mike Gesicki is going to be a red zone monster. So I think the sky's the limit again for this player. I sound like a Miami Dolphin fan. This is making me sick, but they have a lot of talent. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. And look, they made a lot of changes here. And I think Brian Flores loves this. As you can see in the safety positions, you got McCain and Rowe. Expect that to be a little bit of a rotation. If one guy's not playing well, expect them to be moved into the slot, moved outside, or even swapped with probably their star player on the outside, Byron Jones. I can see a lot of matchup nightmares for the offense because you don't know where guys are going to be at. And that's a testament to Brian Flores and his defensive scheme. If you look, you have Xavier Howard opposite of Byron Jones, who's a pretty good corner. I know last year he was put on IR, but prior to last season, he was doing his thing. I think he has a lot of talent, and we'll see how he rebounds from that injury. In the middle, you got 2 really good linebackers, McMillan from Ohio State and Jerome Baker, who I feel like is a magnet for the football. I can't stand him because every time I put on a Dolphins game, he is just causing havoc. Pretty jealous about that linebacking duo because I really wish, my linebacking duo was actually playing with one another. But these 2 linebackers are really good. So, Dolphin fans, this is a duo that you're going to be excited to watch this upcoming season. All right, their front, you got on the outside, on the bookends of the 3-4 defense, you have Beagle and you have Van Noy. These are, I believe Van Noy is going to pretty much be the signal caller up front. I'm not too fond of Beagle, but he's good enough to be starting for Brian Flores, and he's a name that you want to watch out for. The front 3 up front, you have Gaucho. I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry, Dolphin fans. You have Moss opposite of Christian Wilkins, who I think sky's the limit again for this player. This player was drafted in the same draft as Quinnen Williams, and I feel like he's outproduced him. Him and Ed Oliver has kind of, they've kind of surpassed Quinnen Williams in my personal opinion, and he's a hell of an athlete. I think he can actually, rotate into positions where he can be standing, and he's a big guy. These Clemson kids are just athletic as hell. So, listen, man, Wilkins is gonna do his thing. He has a right coach, behind him. This is a really good defense, man. There's a lot to look forward to. All right, let's jump right into the schedule for the Miami Dolphins. Now, as you know, the AFC East, they're facing pretty tough competition as we went through with the Jets and their schedule. But let's start with the Dolphins to see, their path to success. Starts off week 1 at New England. You have coach versus the student, Bill Belichick versus Brian Flores. Week 2 at home to the Bills. Week 3 at Jacksonville. You could pretty much call that a home game because, Dolphin fans will head out to Jacksonville for that. Week 4 versus Seattle at home. Week 5 at San Francisco. Week 6 at Denver. That's a tough 2 weeks on the road out west. Week 7 at home versus the Chargers. Week 8 at home versus the Rams. You got West Coast teams coming out east. That might bode well for the Dolphins. Week 9 at Arizona. Week 10, you have the Jets prior to the bye. And after the bye, you have the Jets once again. Week 13, the Bengals. This is, to me, the biggest game on the calendar for the Dolphins. You have Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa. If they're both healthy and playing and doing their thing, this is going to be the game to watch. You get to watch who's going to be the better quarterback. You don't get that much pretty often in the NFL, so that's going to be a fun matchup. Right after the Bengals, Tua gets the load of the Chiefs, which are the returning champions, Patrick Mahomes. Enough said. I don't have to, get too deep into that. Week 15, the New England Patriots. Week 16, at the Raiders, and they finish up at the Bills in Week 17. So, I'll say that this, my final thoughts about this team, there's a lot of positive here. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of young youth. I think if they go 5-11 again, you can't fault them. They're young. I don't think they're going 5-11. I think they can win 7 games, possibly 8. But, there's youth here. So you just want to see growth. At this point, the more wins, the better. You're playing with house money, Miami. And, I'm pretty jealous. This team looks all right. And it all stems from head coach Brian Flores. And if he gets Tua to what he believes Tua's going to be, which is what Nick Saban got out of Tua, sky's the limit, man. Sky's the limit. All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe and like below. We have the New England Patriots in our next episode, so stay tuned for that. Listen, man, you already know the drill. Legends are made on 4th down. Yeah.